Hi everyone, welcome to the latest and greatest episode of Failing Up. Today I'm sitting down with Max Barrett, who's the co-founder of Friday Beers. Friday Beers originally started with Max and a camera and today has evolved into being a multi-million-dollar media company with Instagram pages, podcasts, and even a newsletter. In this episode, we talk about Max's early career struggles from being super passionate about basketball to making his way into screenwriting, destigmatizing mental health, as well as growing a brand and maintaining authenticity in the process. Hi, Max.
Hi.
It's great to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have some hard-hitting questions from the beginning. So way back before you started Friday Beers, you said you were extremely passionate about basketball growing up and your world revolved around basketball. When that completely fell apart and you realized that you weren't going to be on the basketball team or play in the NBA, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, basketball was it was my passion and my identity growing up. I was delusional enough in, middle school to think I had a chance to, use basketball to either play at a high level in college or overseas. Or my friends will actually say that I made the claim that if I was 6'10", I would be as good as Kevin Durant, which I don't stand by anymore. But when that, as you said, completely fell apart, which basically meant that I went to a D3 school to play basketball, Washington Lee, and after a year, I left the team. I wasn't playing, and I wasn't as passionate about it anymore. And that fire just went out. So to answer your question, when that happened, having spent the last 10 years of my life up to that point, just focused on basketball and training, playing year round. It consumed everything, I did and who I was. So I was kind of basically back at, a starting point of who am I, to quote Zoolander, who am I? If you've ever seen the movie. And I had to, take a step back and reevaluate a lot of things, and find, things to do, interests, hobbies, passions to fill this huge void that was now, present in my life. So it was kind of daunting. I didn't feel, I was 19, so I didn't feel it wasn't a midlife crisis where it's I have time to I'm in college, which is a great time in your life to learn new things, meet new people, experience new things.
So when did you get into writing, creative writing?
It was a long process after that. I got into creative writing. I seriously got into creative writing after college.
Okay.
So after W&L, my first year, I transferred to Georgetown, studied finance, was really bad at it, didn't like it, but I figured I was just kind of under the impression that's what you do if you want to get a job when you graduate and make money and whatever. And all my friends were doing that. So I never really scratched the creative itch, which I had since middle school. I loved watching comedy, movies, shows. I loved being around funny people. I was kind of just a sponge. I knew I gravitated towards that stuff, but I never thought I could do it. I didn't think it's hard to kind of believe you can be creative. It's just, it's a very vulnerable and kind of nerve-wracking thing. So I didn't really get into it until I was at the end of my time at Georgetown, and I knew I didn't want to work in finance or really in just general business. And I was fortunate to have my uncle, Jamie, is a creative director in advertising. So he was the one, I talked to him and I was kind of doing some soul searching, and he was like, oh, you should go to this creative writing school in Atlanta it's called the Creative Circus. No longer exists, RIP, but it was kind of a vocational school where, writers go, designers, art directors, and it's a pipeline into the ad world. So that was a long way of saying I was 23 when I started taking creative writing seriously.
So you said when you first got into it, so you first started on the media and advertising side, and then you transferred into more of like the screenwriting side,
yes.
Right? And you said you got torn apart by professionals and industry professionals. And what gave you the courage, or how did you differentiate between, okay, what's true, what feedback should I be accepting versus I'm going to keep going and say screw it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a really, I think it's a really important kind of, it was a really important learning lesson for me, because as you said, like I had a ton of failures as trying to be a screenwriter or trying to just be a sketch comedy writer. My full-time job was copywriting. So I'm writing very kind of boring, basic ads for, not very exciting companies. And so on the side, I was just trying to write spec scripts and get feedback from people I knew who were either in the industry or, were writers or had any sort of creative experience. And a lot of it was, very negative. Well, not negative, but very kind of lukewarm. They wouldn't say I sucked, but it's kind of like they're just being nice.
But even because when we talked about this last time, you said it was because you had to be somewhat delusional to keep going. Oh,
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So what made you decide to keep going? Like, what made you delusional that this is what you wanted to do?
I think it's if you're so passionate about something, you don't kind of let anything stop you. Yeah. And that's how I felt. I was like, I love this so much. Like, I have so much fun when I'm writing sketches, shooting sketches, editing. Like, I genuinely love doing it. So, and then it takes a level of delusional confidence, belief in yourself. And also, I think the biggest thing is it takes a lot of, like, blocking out the noise, like not kind of, ignoring or not having blinders on a bit, and not being insecure about especially when you're just starting. Like, it's not going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And for me, in my particular case, it wasn't the coolest thing or like the, most impressive thing to be going. All my friends are going to JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, working these, high paying investment banking jobs. And I'm at the Creative Circus. And people are like, yo, what the fuck happened to Max? And there's going to be a lot of noise around that. And it really didn't bother me, because I've always known that what is going to make me happy is like what, I don't know if this makes sense, but what's going to make me happy is like what makes me happy. It's like not the
other people
perception of other people.
Yeah.
Never really cared about that, keeping up with the Joneses type thing. Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about the saying? Because the really popular saying is, don't follow your passion, follow what you're good at first, and then follow your passion later in life. What do you say to that?
I would say, don't follow your passion, follow what you're good at. Yes and no. I am all about taking calculated risk. I don't believe in I'm just going to drop out and move to LA and I'm going to be a writer and I'll, leave everything behind and take a huge gamble on myself. I don't think that's one, smart, and two, I don't think that's the best way to go about it. I think it's about taking calculated risks where you kind of dip your toe into things. Like if you know what your passion is generally, and like you want to try it out, find ways to do it in, smaller capacities. So like my goal was always, I want to write TV and movies. But I don't know how to write a script, like a full script. So let me start by seeing if I'm good at writing, print ads and 30-second TV spots. Oh, I'm good at that. And there's an industry that you can get a job in and pays the bills. And so you kind of take that first step. You're passing kind of benchmarks. And then I'm doing that and I'm still not fulfilled. I'm like, okay, well, I still know what my North Star is. Let me find some times, at night on the weekends to write spec scripts. And you start doing that, you get, mixed feedback and you focus. I think it's important to focus on like the positive feedback, because even though the overwhelming was kind of like indifferent, whatever, there were some, people who were like, oh no, yeah, you have a funny voice, like you're clearly unpolished, but some of these jokes are good. And I'm like, I'm going to listen to everything that guy says. And that kind of fuels me versus, and you have like the more negative stuff. But yeah, again, you have to like have some positive reinforcement. If you're at a certain point, you got to be self-aware and you got to know, okay, I can't do this. And that's harsh to say,
yeah.
But like, it's true. It's, if you spend,
when do you give up your dream? If you're someone who's like, follow your dreams. Because, okay, the thing is, I don't like, maybe this is just the pessimist in me, but I don't like when the people who get the Oscars or the awards always say like, this is your sign to follow your dreams and all this stuff. Because I just think you're saying the 1 in a million chance that it works out exactly the way you want it to. And not to say it couldn't work out half of that way or 75%, right. But yeah, I guess my question is when do you know to give up your dreams? Yeah,
those kind of like big broad statements like follow your dreams. It's very reductive. It's like, well, there's much more like nuance to like following your dreams. It's not like that's kind of a meaningless statement to me. It's like, if you have, it's hard to, your dream in your profession or your career isn't necessarily like, I wouldn't say like, what is it like the ultimate dream? Like if your goal is to, like, you have many goals in life, and if part of your dream is to, have a certain lifestyle or live in a certain place, or, I don't know, if your career dream doesn't contribute to the other dreams, then like, it's all about analyzing like what's going to make you happy at the end of the day, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I think, I say like my dream is, to write movies, TV, but I would say like, my ultimate dream is I want to be really happy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of everyone's dream. Like,
yeah, but a lot of people don't know what happiness means to them. A lot of people,
yes,
I think, especially in this day and age, perceive happiness as materialistic.
100%.
Guilty as charged. I think if I get like a Birkin, I'll be the happiest person on the planet. You know what I mean?
A Birkin.
But obviously there's a lot more.
Yeah.
There's a lot more depth to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very common with a lot of people. I know everyone, has, they want to live a certain way, or, it's nice to have nice things. But I think if you don't have anything outside of that, it can feel empty and it can feel superficial.
My dad said this quote, and he always tells me, he says, Success is getting what you want. Happiness is liking what you get.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, I like that a lot. And to go back to what you're saying about people being driven by material things, I saw from like a very young age growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, being around a lot of super successful, super wealthy people, they were unhappy. And so I was like, okay, so this doesn't translate into being happy in a lot of cases. Like, so what is the missing?
So you don't think money buys happiness?
It can buy freedom, which like can lead to happiness, but no, I don't. Like, in generally, like, I would be, you know, I don't really understand people who are like, they need like the multiple homes and like the fancy cars and like, that to me is all, honestly, like it seems exhausting. It's like
so what is happiness to you then, if it's not those things?
It's doing what I like, what I love, getting to do what I love, which is write comedy, and you know, whatever capacity that may be, or I am like good enough to do. And then it's I think for me, it's like the relationships I have with the people in my life. I think the relationships.
So wholesome. Very wholesome.
I learned that from my dad, who is the ultimate people person. He's an executive recruiter, which makes sense. He's all about relationships, managing relationships, maintaining relationships. You know, he's got a million friends. My uncle has a great quote about my dad. There's an old advertisement for Sara Lee cookies. Like, there's a jingle that goes, "Everybody doesn't like something, but nobody doesn't like Sara Lee." And that's how he describes my dad.
Oh, that's so cute.
And so I've always admired him for that. And he's reinforced that, you know, it doesn't, so happiness for me is like having great relationships with people I love, and being able to put a roof over my head by doing what I love. It's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. Maybe a Birkin would also. a few Birkins. I'm trying to think, if I had unlimited money, like what would be my?
What would be your first purchase?
Yeah, I would get a.
You'd probably open your own like production studio, like full blown production studio.
No, I'm talking about just like a more like superficial thing. Okay. I would get. I would have a personal hibachi room in my house.
Amazing.
And personal hibachi chef. Okay. So I could have hibachi.
I think that's totally justified.
I don't know if I've told you how much I love hibachi, but that's actually one of my greatest passions. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to dive into building Friday Beers. So Friday Beers has grown into a $30 million plus media brand with 26 million followers across a bunch of platforms. You have a newsletter, you have multiple podcasts, you have multiple Instagram pages, and you recently fundraised $6 million?
Yeah, in 2022, we raised $6 million.
Okay. What do you think made you so attractive to investors at the time? Especially given that investors don't typically go after siblings, because you co-founded it with your brother, or married couples, things like that.
Is that, I didn't realize that. Is that like when investors are analyzing a business, it's like
yeah. So in the world of investing, sometimes you don't want to
you want to work
invest in companies where there's like a lot of personal relationships, because if things fall apart, it can get really messy. So sometimes they're very iffy about married couples.
That makes sense.
I don't know about siblings, but I'm guessing it's the same thing.
There's a great documentary about a married couple who ran this restaurant in New York. I forget what it's called. Okay. I won't go on that tangent, but
okay. Answer the question.
It proves your point.
What was attractive about your business, do you think?
Well, I think what was attractive about the business was for a long time in the entertainment space, and I say entertainment space, I include social media.
Right.
Mm-hmm. There was a drought of there's an absence of this type of comedy, this type of bro humor that was really popular, for many decades, starting with National Lampoon and Harold Ramis and Doug Kenny and Caddyshack, all the way through 90s SNL and Sandler and Farley. And then you had social media and Good Neighbor stuff and Lonely Island. And it was just like, it was everywhere. And it was huge. And it was so popular. And, the Apatow movies, Adam McKay, Will Ferrell, Old School, Anchorman, like blockbuster hits.
Right.
And it was a cash cow. I mean, people were making tons of money, but also it resonated with an audience in like a really meaningful way. Guys my age, like their entire lexicon is just quoting Anchorman and, Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore, like literally ingrained in us. And then that type of comedy stopped being, they stopped making it around like 2010. I want to say like the last great comedy movie or show, in my opinion, that stands the test of time is probably like The Other Guys, which I don't know.
Love that movie.
Okay, yeah,
very funny,
incredible,
very very. Funny.
And then culture shifted. There's a lot of sensitivity.
So did the pendulum completely swing when there was like I don't know how to. What everyone calls woke culture.
Yes.
Is that what kind of led to the kind of temporary pause of
culture
for a little bit?
There was 100%. I also I don't like the phrase woke culture. But for lack of a better phrase, yes. People and there's very, there are problematic parts of that comedy back in the day, but it didn't define the comedy. Like they were kind of like making a generalization about that entire genre based on like a few bad jokes.
Yeah, but those bad jokes were the ones that got super popular.
Yeah.
It was and a lot of we've had this conversation, but a lot of the content that was made in regards to women was just super derogatory.
Yeah, I mean, there's
insulting.
there's mortifying, like horrifying jokes.
Have you read a comment section of Barstool?
Yeah, and it still exists, and and that type of mentality was kind of being conflated with that entire genre, which.
Yeah.
If you just look at it objectively, like it's unfair to. It's like if a fly lands on, a dinner spread and then you throw the entire thing out. It's like no, you can still.
That's true. So where did you see the solution being Friday beers?
The solution. So I was trying to do it just through making long form sketch comedy because that's what I used to watch in high school and college, Good Neighbors stuff, which I consider, the GOAT of not just sketch comedy, but just comedy in general. And I realized that type of long form sketch didn't work anymore because people started consuming content in a much more ADD, quick hit, 60 second, which I wasn't familiar with because I didn't grow up with it. But then I started seeing all these meme pages blow up and, meme culture, the onset of meme culture made me rethink, how should I actually build a following, get my jokes out into the world?
And what do you think the meme pages at the time when you were like, oh, maybe I should start this thing? What were they missing?
Originality.
Was it all the same stuff?
Well, a lot of meme pages were just curating other people's jokes. They were stealing other people's jokes.
Oh yeah, a lot of them were screenshots. I remember Instagram 2014 or something.
Yeah, so the initial meme, the idea of memes was, oh, these are just thieves who are, they're not creative, but they're monetizing other people's creativity.
Yeah, sure.
It was a Wild West. Like there was no
Wild West of meme culture.
Yeah.
And what were the biggest pages at the time?
God, I think it was like Fuck Jerry. I know that was the biggest one. And I know they faced some blowback from comedians who were like, you know, these guys or whoever was running the company they're just like taking our jokes. They're not even like giving us credit for the jokes. Mm-hmm. And so that stigma around memes made me stay away because I was like, I don't want to be associated with that. But then people started using that format and injecting their voices, their original voices, their original comedy. So it just became another kind of, another format to tell jokes. So if looking at it that way, I was like, oh, so I can start a meme page and be original. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was this weird blend of like, it's just like a new form. I mean, it's going to sound, I hate using the word art. It just sounds very pretentious, but it was like a new art form.
Memes are art. You're making people laugh.
Yeah. And it's, you know, you're combining aspects of pop culture, music, nostalgia. You're juxtaposing things in a way that, you know, it's kind of like making a mashup of a song where like you're taking existing things, but you're presenting them in a new way where it taps into a familiarity, but it feels new. I
didn't realize like the emotions behind memes are that complicated. I feel like it's probably really hard to run a meme page because it's emotionally you have to appeal. Sometimes it's very niche. Like
so that's you know a big reason to go back to why I started the meme page was recognizing, okay, I feel like I'm good enough now where I can write jokes and like develop funny characters, but I have to package them in a way that an audience like will pay attention to or like will want to share or consume, and people don't want to sit down and watch a 5-minute sketch. They just want a funny 30-second, 60-second video that they can then share with their friends and kind of take pride and like find, you know, that's a big part of it too, like the culture of sharing memes. Mm-hmm. So that was the kind of the inspiration, motivation to start Friday Beers, as well as that drought I talked about and like that lack of comedy. I was like, okay, I'm going to reframe this comedy that has been deemed problematic, because the only thing you need to do is just don't punch down. Like if you take the majority of the jokes and the style of comedy and you don't punch down, you're self-aware, you make it accessible, approachable. You don't make it feel like it's exclusive or you have to be a certain way or from a certain background. That's how it resonates with people. And that was became a really refreshing take on bro humor. I call it anti-bro humor.
And what is that defined as?
It's defined as it's basically just like, it's satirical bro humor where we're hiding in plain sight. We're making fun of that culture while also embracing and celebrating it. But in a different way than it was used to be embraced and celebrated. So yeah, that was the inspiration for the meme account.
That's amazing. That's so in depth. I love it. That's so cool. I'm just in awe of the psychology behind memes, because you're so right. There's so many components that go into it.
Right.
It's not like you're posting an aesthetic photo and that's it. It's like it has to be timely. It has to be looking the right way, looking funny, the font, yes, the placement of everything, and everything you were saying is just so.
Yeah. So to go back to what I stopped myself from saying earlier, what you just mentioned about like that formula, what really was our strength and like our, I would say like special sauce was the fact that, me and my brother Jack and my brother Sam are all like comedy nerds. Like we have seen every episode of It's Always Sunny 10 times each. Same thing for Arrested Development, The Office. I've seen Dumb and Dumber 50 times. Like, so my brain was just filled with these useless references that I was like, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to be able to do anything with this, you know, this skill set. But when we started making memes and I was, you know, doing the editing of the videos, I would pull from these movies and shows, and it was this sense of nostalgia that a lot of people my age were like, oh my God, I forgot about this clip or this character or this scene. But then it wasn't just like, here's the clip. It was a mashup of, it was kind of like a sketch, but with found footage. So they're seeing things, you know, that inherently make them laugh, but then we're using text on top of it to, repurpose the joke, make new jokes, just add new energy to it, you know, layer music underneath. So again, it became, so I used to get into debates with my buddy Tyler Falbo, who's an incredibly talented director that I work with, and he's very high integrity as a filmmaker, and he didn't really understand. Well, he didn't really respect like the memes that we were making. Or he just like didn't really get it. And so one of the more insane things I ever told him or like claimed about, or one of the more insane comparisons I made was I compared what I was making with like this mashup of clips that were there, existed, but I was adding new jokes and new humor and presenting it in a new light. So I basically said, Friday Beers is to comedy in the same way Kanye West is to music. Because
he was like, what?
Well, because Kanye, and again, I don't stand by that anymore. But the point was that Kanye, he would just sample song, like that was, you know,
yeah.
For his first couple albums, like he kind of was notorious for.
He was so
he was sampling existing stuff. So it's not like he was coming up with a lot of these kind of like the vocal tracks that he was using. He was using iconic songs that were super successful before he touched them, but he was obviously doing it in like this, you know, genius way. And then, you know, he's rapping on top of it. So, but again, like it's just like this.
What did you say? It was a mashup of what?
A mashup. What are the Friday Beers?
Yeah.
The original Friday Beers videos that I used to make were a mashup of pop culture references, music, like kind of like timeless music, or as I call it, tasty licks, and nostalgia, and then original joke telling, original characters, and compelling comedic narrative. So it wasn't just one-off jokes. We were building a story, piece by piece.
So I love how you said that this was the anti-bro culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's mental. You said you wanted to make it a safe space for men to express themselves. Like you kind of wanted to build a community. What got you passionate about that to begin with? Because I feel like that's something that's not really addressed or discussed. It's starting to be discussed more often now, but men's mental health is something that's still pretty heavily stigmatized.
Because I loved when I was in college, after college, you know, if you just looked at me on paper, you'd be like, oh, like generic frat bro, which yes, on paper, I was like, I loved playing beer pong and hanging out with my friends, and yeah, just doing those stereotypical things. But I realized that a lot of that was, most of that was escapism from, more escapism from hard feelings or emotions that I was dealing with. And like, that was my therapy. Like I would just, if I was going through a tough time or having, a mental health struggle, my solution was I'm going to go play pong with my boy, Will Knox, shout out Will Knox. And I'll be happy. And so that was a big reason why the comedy is not like this chest beating, like we think this is fucking sick. Like we play pong cause like it's chill, and like we're cool. It's like, no, we do that cause we like can't be with ourselves. And we're really sad and lonely, and I'm not proud, to, drink 12 beers in a night. Mm-hmm. And so when we started creating this party lifestyle comedy page, a big part of it was bringing that to light and making sure that it wasn't interpreted, it wasn't, so heavy handed in like everything we posted, but we would make references to stuff like that. And
people appreciated it.
Oh yeah. It resonated with so many guys because so many guys were going through the same thing and felt the same way.
Didn't you say a guy said to you, you've done more for men's mental health?
Yeah.
What did he say?
Man, I wish I could pull up. The comment section used to make comments like that all the time, where it was, but the comment you're referring to is, someone said Friday Beers has done more for the destigmatization of men's mental health than any health service, hospital, government agency, which I don't know if that's true, but
the fact that someone said that means a lot.
Yeah. And yeah, it was,
and it's such an interesting way you're going about it. Like you're creating a community and a space for men to be true to themselves and be open with one another through comedy,
yes,
which is very interesting.
Right. So that's a big part of it is like, guys don't want to talk about this stuff unless there's like, it's like wrapped in humor, Mm-hmm. They don't want to have a super serious conversation, but they can joke about it. And yeah, so that was definitely ingrained in the comedy right off the bat. And mm-hmm. And people started recognizing it, not just our followers, but, like for example, I think the first year we started Friday Beers, we partnered with Movember, which they do a lot of like stuff with men's health. And so we did a whole campaign with them where we raised money through selling merchandise mm-hmm. that had, it was like shirts with slogans like hug your bros, check in on the fellas, cool guys cry,
true,
things like that. Yeah. And so yeah, that was a big part of it.
So the suicide rate amongst men is 4 times higher than what it was per woman in 2022. And men today account for 79% of suicides. Where do you think that issue rose from? I mean, because it is something that has grown progressively worse over the years. Mm-hmm. And what do you see as the solution to this problem?
So I'm very familiar with those statistics. And we created me and a couple other of my writing partners made a show called Are You My Boy, which was an unscripted show, it was kind of a Nathan For You style, like bait and switch show where we bring in kind of closed off toxic dudes into what they think is like a frat Olympics. And then it's revealed that all of the activities they're doing, which there's like the generic, cool guy stuff. Like we have beer pong tournaments, or you have like hitting on girls challenge. And they think, so for example, like the talking to girls challenge, they think they're going to be evaluated based on who can, attract the most women.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, there's a panel of therapists watching them and analyzing who's the most respectful, who's the most engaging, like who's, being the most gentlemanly. And so every criteria for evaluation is different than what they think they're going in. So like the beer pong tournament, we would have, we'd bring in like a celebrity guest who would just mercilessly bully one of the guys while they're playing. And so it's not who wins the beer pong tournament, it's who's the first guy who stands up for his boy. And it's like, you need to stop making fun.
And I guess what were their reactions to that? And
everyone loved it. Like we pitched it to a ton of places. Everyone loved it. We sold it to Hulu, a development deal. So we developed it with them, and then
did it ever go live?
No. The development process is a whole nother podcast. And as far as like how hard it is.
But why don't you guys do that series yourselves on Friday Beers?
We've thought about self-funding. Yeah. And we still might.
I think that's such a good idea. That's such a beautiful idea.
Yeah. It's funny. I know I'm going on a tangent here. I'll get back to the original question, but the biggest critique of it is like it's too high concept. A lot of streamers,
what does that even mean?
It means that every streamer just wants the next is it cake, something like reality shows that are simple and kind of mind numbing. They want Masked Singer, and so it's hard to sell a show that's a bit more thought provoking and cerebral.
I would watch that for sure.
I mean,
I don't know if I'm the target audience, but I would watch that.
No, I genuinely think more girls would watch it than guys.
Because they would give us like faith that there are good guys out there, and every guy's more so, hard shell on the outside and then a teddy bear on the inside.
And just revealing that, or just seeing guys like get reformed. Showing that people have the capacity or potential to do that. But in the process of writing that show, we met with, very seasoned and successful therapists and psychologists, men's health experts about, how to structure the show so that it addresses the real issues that exist in the world. So we were highly educated on like the real issues, like the statistics you mentioned. So it was it was kind of as much as, obviously it was a comedy show. It was the point of the show is to make people laugh.
Yeah.
But it's also
wrapped in wholesomeness.
Wrapped in like this real, I think a really important message of guys struggle so much as anyone else, but they do not talk about it. And they, it's all shoulder to shoulder interactions. Women, it's much more common to have face to face interactions. I mean, I can't make eye contact, so this is really tough for me right now. But yeah, it's kind of how we're conditioned is like, we bond through, let's go watch a sports game. Like, and then like kind of, we'll talk, I'll talk to you over here, but like, we need something to distract us from the actual substance of our conversations. And yeah, it's, there's historically not a lot of sympathy or compassion for guys who are going through something and want help, want support.
So what's the solution? The
solution is to reach people, in my opinion, through comedy. I teach that lesson through things like satire, and it's because no one wants to, they don't want to have those hard, serious conversations. So you got to present it in a way that's palatable.
Yeah.
Present it in a way that makes you realize kind of the absurdity of guys being closed off, but not by just saying like this shouldn't be that way. You know, you guys need to open up. And then having, I think, people kind of universally viewed masculine people participate in that, you know, the new wave of like bro sensitivity.
So if a guy's listening to this and struggling, but doesn't know how to open up, what advice would you give him? Or also her, honestly, anyone who's struggling to open up.
I would say start with therapy. Like, everyone should be in therapy. Therapy is your emotional health is not only is it as important as your physical health, it's, in my opinion, way more important. Your emotional and mental health is way more important than your I'll say as important as your physical health. And it's funny because there are gyms on every block, and you know that, oh, if I don't work out, I'm gonna get out of shape. Your emotions and your mental, it's like a muscle. It's like, if you aren't paying attention to it, if you aren't working on it, it's going to deteriorate. So my first suggestion would be to, you know, explore therapy or, you know, support groups, or I don't know what other options are out there, but a more kind of professional licensed and get understanding of what you're going through in like a professional license or capacity. And then recognize like, who are you comfortable opening up to? Because a big thing I've learned through my experience through therapy is people are going to have emotional boundaries. Not everyone is going to be able to
receive what you're
receive or reciprocate. Mm-hmm. So if you open up to someone and they're not really, you know, they don't really care, or they're weirded out or whatever, you know, then that's not a person you can, you know, get that, you know, emotional support from.
Yeah. And I would also say, don't take it personally.
Yes. Yeah. Don't internalize, don't take it personally. And yeah, if you're in fear of being judged by that person, or losing their respect or friendship, probably not a great person to have in your life. So it's like, it's coming to, you got to evaluate like what's more important. You know, I have friends who, I'm lucky to have a group of really close friends that I grew up with, and we're so sensitive and like too emotional, like to a fault. So I've always had.
That's adorable. I would say that's way better than the other way around, where people don't share anything. So.
And I've always, I've been able to open up to them as much, you know, as much as possible, really. But then I have other friends who it is just like, you know, I understand that this friendship is more lighthearted, and there are boundaries there, and I'm not going to burden them or put them in an uncomfortable position. So for someone who wants to open up, doesn't know how, I would say, like, take a look at your support system. Who in your life do you think who do you trust? You know, I wouldn't say don't like, what's the term? Don't like trauma dump everything, but like ask them about, again, it's a calculated risk. Like, I had a bad day. Like, talk about that.
Something I tried out, actually, I told this to my friend Leia. I was like, what does your emotional battery look like to be able to take on everything I'm saying? And she was like, don't ask me that question again.
That's so funny. Emotional battery. Okay, so that's reminded me of another nickname for my dad that my uncle came up with.
Okay.
My uncle loves, he's a creative one, so he's always coming up with these creative terms. He calls my dad NEB, N-E-B. It's an acronym. It stands for narrow emotional bandwidth, which means that it doesn't mean he doesn't have deep empathy and compassion. It means that if the scale is 1 to 10, he's at a 4 to a 6 emotionally, like stability wise. Like he's never too high, never too low. He's very stable. Like he's a rock, which is, perfect to have as a, a dad and, your support system. Cause he's very balanced. I'm like a 1 to a 10. So like I have really great days. I have really bad days.
You seem like you're a very deeply emotional person.
Yeah.
Same. I cry like all the time.
Crying is good. Crying is, I had a therapist tell me once that crying is actually like physically, there's a study was done where they sampled the tears. This is a random tangent. They sampled the tears of people who were crying out of grief, who were crying out of happiness, who were crying out of what other ways do you cry?
Anger, frustration.
Yeah. And in those samples of tears, in the ones where it was like because of grief or sadness, there's actually a chemical in them that your body's releasing. So it's actually helping you get over that grief, and like your body is.
Yeah. For sure. I feel so much better every time I cry. It's like a therapeutic.
Yeah, but it's like a
therapeutic release.
But it's actually like scientific.
Yeah.
Which I found fascinating. Because you're always, the kind of cliche is like, tough guys, like you don't cry. It's like, well, no, your body is like, your body's telling you like this is going to help me like get rid of these toxins.
Like a lot of my guy friends, they kind of, or even my brothers, but my brothers have gotten better with their emotions as they've gotten older, is that they kind of bottle it in. They bottle it in for sometimes years, and then it just explodes, and it's like they cry for a very long time. So I think if you can, rather than letting it build up and then suddenly explode, in small doses could be good.
I have a very personal experience with someone who was very close to me who was like that. Kept everything pent up for a long time, tried to be like the rock that he thought he needed to be, and there was a moment where he was going through a tough time and a tough moment really, and I gave him a hug, and he just collapsed in tears and sobs that it wasn't because of that one moment, it was because of years of like holding it in and trying to be, the stable one to rely on, making sure that everyone else is okay, and like not burden anyone with what he's actually going through. And I could literally like feel like years and years of that pent up emotion come out in, the, I don't know, two minutes, could have been 2 minutes, could have been 20 minutes, but we just stood there hugging, and he was, just letting it all out. So I agree. You don't want to do that. You don't want to keep it in.
So my last question in regards to what you've built is, how do you balance the desire? Because you guys are a company, funded by investors, right? So how do you balance the need for growth versus remaining authentic?
It's a really good question. At a certain point, you will need to compromise your like original authenticity and voice, not in huge ways, but it's just the nature of business and commerce. And how can you keep doing what you're doing, and stay true to yourself, but also build something. And it's very, it's nuanced and fragile. But I think there's also a lot of power in like that voice is what grew your audience. So staying true to it is equally as important as like, let's scale in other ways that maybe are faster, more efficient. And I'm not the business guy, but I just know that there are ways to, if you go from a single Instagram page with 3 guys and then you have a company with 40 employees, you have to make money. And so there's going to be compromise, but I think having just clear just guidelines and making sure that you're communicating within your company, like what you stand for, making sure people know like what you stand for, kind of what the voice is, and not leaving it up for interpretation, and just being taking a lot of pride in that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's tough.
Sounds like it's a tricky.
It's tough to navigate. But yeah, I think it just takes a lot of. I'll go back to like the calculated risk thing. Is it worth it to? I'll just make up a hypothetical. Like a brand comes to you and they are going to pay you for like a 6-month campaign, and you're going to make a lot of money, but it's not really like a product or a service, or maybe it's another brand partner that isn't like true to who you are, and it kind of feels conflicting with like the values of the brand. But how much damage is that going to do to the brand versus the upside, and how it's going to help the business? So it's very case by case.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left the company in July to pursue screenwriting full time, because that was always my North Star. And that was that's my version of my personal version
of calculated risk.
Calculated risk. And also, is it more important for me to be true to myself and follow what I love and who I am and what I want to be? Or do I, want to be in a position where I'm doing things that I don't necessarily like want to be doing, but it's helping, the company, which I love. And so that was, obviously what I concluded was I'm going to be selfish and go follow what I love to do. Mm. But yeah, it's every situation is different. I would say just be thoughtful, take calculated risks, and have a lot of conversations about it. Like don't do anything impulsively.
Okay. Good answer. And then my last question is, given that you've been in the industry now, you've sold a movie, a couple movies?
I've had 3 development deals for TV shows.
Okay.
And currently in the process of selling a movie.
Woo!
Yeah.
Amazing. Congrats. So what is someone that you've met in the industry has taught you that has stuck with you?
What has stuck with me?
Doesn't even have to be.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It was right there. The best thing someone has told me was, don't, or just start, make it perfect later. I don't think it was his quote. I think it's like it existed before he said it, but it was the first time I had heard it. And, it was when I was making sketch comedy, and I was like, I don't know how to, I was like, I want to make this really I need to get the right camera, and I need to get better at editing before I put anything out. And he's like, dude, just start, you'll make it perfect later. And so that day I literally went to the electronics store next to my office, bought a camera, got home, me and my buddy made a video together, had a blast. It was a terrible video. But we just started, and then we got better from there. We refined it. We got our reps in. Mm-hmm. yeah, don't wait to do something you want to do. Yeah, Nike, just do it. But yeah, it's like start, make it perfect later. Don't overthink things too much. And yeah, that's
amazing.
That applies to everything in the creative world.
Yeah, I would say life in general. just send it. Just do it. So how can people get in touch with you? How can people support whatever you're doing?
They can give my Venmo. You can Venmo me some cash. No, so Friday Beers, Instagram.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of Instagram pages.
But what I'm most proud of, and the best way to support the comedy that I'm trying to bring back, the company's trying to bring back, is to support, go watch Almost Friday TV YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. It is funny.
That's the evolution from the meme format into actual live action sketches. And I would say just start watching all those old movies and shows again and remind yourself of how funny this stuff is. And
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was really great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is fun. Can I share my conspiracy theories now?
No. Okay.